Hi everyone, Deadfox here. First of all, sorry for being AWOL for a while, but here we are with another video. Do you know when you just want to have fun with a simple yet enjoyable video game? Maybe just shoot some things? Well, I think that Left 4 Dead is a pretty good example of that. It is one of those games that you can always jump in, alone or with friends, and simply have some fun. No heavy story, no overwhelming amounts of dialogue, a gameplay that can be as challenging as you want, and no pressure from a competitive community. We all know that games that are made by Valve are set on gold pedestals, and I think that Left 4 Dead and Left 4 Dead 2 are two examples of the most remarkable projects, games that I and many people really appreciate and enjoy, and I have many memories from those games. Left 4 Dead 2 was released in November 2009, and well, that is a very long time ago. Now this game has a very dedicated community with a huge amount of talented modders that help the game stay fresh with really high quality mods that helps the game look good even in 2020. Download high quality crispy character models, weapons with custom sound effects, animations and textures, and a map retexture, as well as some visual improvements mods and maybe an EMB, and you're good to go. And while I believe that the Left 4 Dead formula is a very unique concept that is very hard to replicate, some games have tried. It is a simple yet perfectly balanced set of characteristics in my opinion. Despite my love for the game, I honestly have been looking for something new, something fresh. So instead of stressing out in rank on Rainbow Six Siege or questioning my choices in Disco Elysium, I choose two simple games that were built upon this formula, but with different materials to work with. Let's take a look at Earthfall and World War Z and why it is so hard to make a game as enjoyable and as competent as Left 4 Dead in 2020.
There's a pipe bomb here!
Starting with Earthfall. Earthfall is a 4-player cooperative first-person shooter video game developed by American studio HoloSpark and published by Gearbox Publishing. It was released on July 13, 2018 for Microsoft Windows, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch. I want to leave something very clear before we start with the notes, and that is that it is no secret nor a lie that this game was built upon the Left 4 Dead formula. Just playing it for 5 minutes feels like you're playing a modded version of Left 4 Dead, which in my opinion there's nothing wrong with that, but I will suggest that if you're going to do that, if you're gonna take something as a foundation, at least try to improve upon it. So let's dive into the notes. Starting with the good notes, the new additions like the various types of grenades like the mines and the simple frag grenades, as well as the healing station, the mobile and auto turrets, as well as the 3D printers and barricades are interesting concepts. I'm gonna dive a little bit deeper into it when I talk a bit about World War Z and how World War Z I think does it way better than Earthfall, but at least it deserves some merit for trying to do something new. The Enragers are a cool enemy, a cool addition, as well as the Blackout, but I think World War Z handles it a bit better, but I'm gonna talk a little bit about that when I go into World War Z. Dual Desert Eagles. There's nothing else. Dual Desert Eagles, yes. I think the chapters Data Recovery, Sunnyvale, R&D, Into the Breach were quite enjoyable and unique. I like that Earthfall tries to give you a different scenery, a different scenario in each chapter, so you have something different to look at. I like the small details that gives the weapon a slight modern and futuristic look. For example, there's an MP5 and it has this weird sort of aluminum pieces and it looks a bit futuristic, or at least that it was modified by someone. I like the unique heavy weapons to carry, you know, the flamethrower, the Gatling gun, the grenade/explosive type of weapon that has a magazine, I can't remember his name. And like I said, the maps are fairly different and try to give you something new to look at. Those are some of the positives that I wrote about Earthfall. Let's get into the bad stuff, the overall negative stuff in the game. I think the soundtrack could be better. It feels very generic, very uninspired, and overall very boring. It's not interesting to listen to, and I found myself turning off the soundtrack many times while I was playing this game. I think when the developers try to make some sort of new version of the Left 4 Dead characters, and they're merely a shadow of them. I know Earthfall players probably hate when Earthfall is being compared to Left 4 Dead, but it's very hard not to do that. And I think the main cast seems like a failed attempt to replicate the Left 4 Dead cast. None of them are interesting Maya and perhaps Roy stand out or are more memorable, but the others are not. And I say that very vaguely. They're very memorable. Maya has a really poorly written backstory. They have repetitive voice lines and overall boring interactions and comments about absolutely everything. There is no RNG in missions, essentially killing the replay value. One of the things that Left 4 Dead does very well, and I think it's a very simple concept, and I can understand why the Earthfall developers could overlook that, is that Left 4 Dead has RNG value. Sometimes when you play a match, there's not always going to be a shotgun there, or a melee weapon there, or a pipe bomb there, or anything. And Earthfall does not do this. For example, there's a level, and there's always a sniper rifle in one of the train cars. There's always barricades in the first garage in the first mission. There is no RNG, and overall, it kills the replay value. Some levels are short and boring and uninspired, especially the first two. They're so flat, to say the least, that they're so flat and so like meh to play. The weapon distribution and the weapon placement, I think it's very weird because in some levels there's a huge lack of melee weapons and the Magnum in some levels as well, and there's like other levels where you find Magnums absolutely everywhere, and it's a bit of a mixed bag. Speaking of melee weapons, I think the melee weapons are not interesting at all. Like, they're just an axe, a machete. And I'm not trying to say, like, do something crazy. Like, for example, Saints Row, I know those very crazy melee weapons, but at least try to give them a unique design. Like, they're the most boring and generic melee weapons you've seen in a video game. Speaking a bit about missed opportunities, one is the ability to unlock more plans for the trader printer, therefore giving the player a simple but fun reason to replay the missions. Imagine just playing the missions and obtaining different plans or different attachments for the weapons for completing the mission, as a reward. Another missed opportunity is the ability to customize your weapons, add sights, grips, barrel extensions, accessories, stuff like that. That gives the player a sense of progression and a goal that Earthfall lacks. Going back to the Left 4 Dead concept, we know Earthfall takes Left 4 Dead as a foundation, so like I said, that's just very weird why they didn't improve upon some of the Left 4 Dead concept. One is the limited selection of weapons, especially handguns and magnums. They could have added variants or something like that, maybe auto pistols or simply stronger pistols able to use sights or something, to add something different. They even directly took the low damage pistols and high damage magnum idea straight from Left 4 Dead. They weren't even creative enough to add variants. We have the exact same Desert Eagle. I also don't understand the lack of animations in certain actions, like for example healing. Healing is something that you'll see a lot of times during matches and during your gameplay, and why we don't have animations, like, I really don't understand. The level revelation directly takes the same context of the Left 4 Dead campaign Death Doll, where there is a guy trapped in a church and we can talk to him only through the door. We never see him. Also, the concept of the resistance is very vague. We barely see the resistance ever, if at all. And it is just something to add to the script to say, look, the story is kind of moving forward. We're no longer wandering aimlessly. We now do tasks for the resistance. But like, it just doesn't matter because it's just something they say. Like, we just spawn on the levels and do stuff for the resistance, so we don't know the resistance and we couldn't care less about them. In the last mission of the game, there's a person that dies that belongs to the resistance that was trapped in a mine, and the problem is that I couldn't care less about him. I don't know who he is, and like I said, I couldn't care less. I've never seen him. He hasn't done anything for us. He's just a part of the resistance and we're supposed to care, and there's no reason to. Now, I know that sounded very harsh, very rude, and that is not my intention. My intention is just to simply just criticize some of the concepts of the game as politely as I can. The problem I have generally with Earthfall is that it directly takes the Left 4 Dead formula. It takes the foundation of the Left 4 Dead formula, but it doesn't improve upon it. Sure, it adds a few components to make the thing look a bit fresh compared to Left 4 Dead, better graphics and this and that, but they missed a lot of opportunities to, add more weapons, customize the weapon, add classes, something like that, some sort of progression to the player. They're taking a concept from a game that was released 10 years ago and only adding a few things here and there, and that is the problem. 10 years has passed in Left 4 Dead has released. The least you can do, in my opinion, is just to add more and more stuff, improve upon the formula, not take the formula directly and just add some things here and there. And I think that's the huge problem with Earthfall. It's not a terrible game. I had some fun in some levels, I'm going to be honest, and I think it could be better with friends. I played it alone because my friends saw the game and were like, nope, I'm not touching that. And that's fine, I can understand that, but I think the game can be better with friends. It's an average game. It's not mind-blowing, it's not terrible, but it's there. Now let's talk a bit about a game that I actually really enjoy and that I'm playing right now, and that is World War Z. World War Z is a third-person shooter video game developed by Saber Interactive and published by Mad Dog Games. It was released for Microsoft Windows, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One on April 16, 2019. It is based on the novel, and I'm really sure it takes visual inspiration from the film starring Brad Pitt. One thing worth mentioning is that I couldn't get the game on Microsoft Windows because it is not available in my country, so I sadly had to download the Epic Games launcher, and as much as I dislike that launcher, I think it's worth because I really enjoy the game. We're going to start with the bad stuff, which is it's just a handful of bad characteristic that this game has. One is that the characters could use more voice lines, in my opinion. Another is the balance of some weapon upgrades. You can upgrade some weapons in this game, like in Earthfall, but the thing with World War Z is that there are some pointless weapon upgrades. For example, there are two paths that you can take when upgrading your weapon. One is clearly better than the other. It's just specific to some weapons, but the problem is that why add two different paths if one is clearly better? Why add more options if one is clearly better? The players are going to pick that option. The only situation I can think of where you'll choose an upgrade over another one is if it has a silencer, because there is a sound mechanic in this game. Other than that, there are very specific weapon upgrades that are just pointless in comparison to others. And last, I think it needs more levels and overall a continuous support from the game developers. I know they have supported the game, they have added more levels to kind of give closure to the stories, and they also have released some weapon skins and some character cosmetics, but I think we need more actual chapters. Now let's move on to the good stuff. We're going to start with great character design. I really like the character design. The models are very well designed, and I think each character has a unique personality, and you can tell by the looks. You can learn a little bit about them due to the looks they have. The game has a very fluid third-person shooter mechanics. It feels fun and overall very intuitive and nice to play. Just to move around feels great. I think that's very important when making these kinds of games. I was talking a little bit about that in my Sunset Overdrive video, how the movement alone is very important, so I think this is well appreciated. Now, usually third-person shooters have average to mediocre weapon animations, but I think this game has really good weapon animations and weapon sounds. The game is well optimized. I was thinking, I'm not sure my machine could run it because there are a lot of zombies on screen, a lot of spawns, but I think the game is well optimized. My PC is just average. I mean, it's not the worst, it's not the best, it's just average, and it runs well on high. The game has really good level design, lots of details and varied scenarios. It's the same thing that Earthfall does, where it tries to give you something different to look at each level. I just think World War Z does it just better. I think the scenarios are well crafted. There are decent objectives and stuff like that, and it's overall more interesting to play. The difficulty done right is also something that I appreciate a lot. As someone who really enjoys high difficulty in games but is not a fan of artificial high difficulties, like for example the high difficulty on Wolfenstein the Youngblood and Payday 2, just two examples. I think that's just artificial difficulty. I think this game does it very well because it changes some zombie spawns and you can get flanked in different areas. It reduces the amount of resources you get. It changes the spawns of it, and well, it increases the amount of enemies, and I think the zombies are more aggressive and more sensible to sound, so that's appreciated. Proper RNG. I think the RNG varies depending on your difficulty, but I mean, if you're playing in lower difficulties, you'll find more weapons and stuff like that, but I think it does a well job at giving you just good RNG overall, different weapon spawns, different heavy weapons, and different tools to defend your position when you're in a horde checkpoint, stuff like that. I think it's just good. And this just adds fuel to the replay value, something that Earthfall lacks. Good customization options, class progressions, perks. There are classes in this game, and you can take different perks and different weapons that go according to that particular class, and you can customize your character and stuff like that. It's just minimal, the visual of the character, but the classes and the perks, you can really craft some interesting builds, some medic builds, maybe some just DPS, some support stuff, anything, and I think it's good, something that Earthfall is also lacking. I mean, that's why I like World War C a lot, because it takes the basic Left 4 Dead formula and it improves upon it. There is also an incentive to play quietly in some areas, especially if you're playing in the highest difficulty. You can save yourself some resources by not fighting that many zombies in a specific area. If you go silently, if you go by doing melee, if you go by using a suppressor in your weapon, you can avoid extra conflict, and that's something to keep in mind if you're playing in the highest difficulty. It encourages team play. In hordes, you know where the zombies are coming from. The interesting detail is that specials spawn in different places around the map, and the game sometimes randomly spawns enemies in dark corners of the map, and if you're not careful, you can get down easily, especially in the highest difficulty of the game. So that encourages you to stick with your team and play to win instead of just mindlessly shooting the horde. Also, I mentioned classes, so there's a reason why maybe you can play medic and one of your friends can play support, one of your friends can play DPS to take care of the horde, stuff like that. Also, for example, if you're being targeted by a special riot zombie, by a heavy riot zombie, you can run on the opposite direction of your team and they can shoot it in the back. Also, in the highest difficulty of the game, medics and fixers are crazy useful, so not only you are forced to stick together and play as a team, but also to prioritize resources and choose who gets this and who gets that. Watch each other's back and so you don't get flanked, and establish firing lines in order to survive, and I think that's good. It encourages the team play. Last but not least, I think the game is well balanced, and it adds some very well thought difficulty levels, and it has fast matchmaking and good servers. I've never had any connectivity issues. So like I said, it takes things from Left 4 Dead 2, sure, like the special enemies, stuff like that, but I think it improves upon it. Like I said many times during this section, it improves upon it, and it adds new concepts, and overall it makes the game interesting. Looking back at what I said at the beginning of the video, I was thinking, I said that the Left 4 Dead formula was a thing that was hard to replicate. And I think I got the concept wrong. After playing World War C almost every single day for around 3 weeks, I think I came to the conclusion that the hard part is not replicating the formula, recreating the formula, because that is not hard. We can see that perfectly in the Earthfall example, in the Earthfall section that I did in this video, that honestly the formula is not really hard to replicate. They simply took some ideas from Left 4 Dead and reimagined them and reintroduced them to the game. Sure, it's set in another universe and it has a few things here and there, but honestly it's not enough to call it a game that came from zero. World War C is also guilty of this, because like I said, it took the concept of Left 4 Dead and it took inspiration from the movie and the novel, and arguably that's just much material to work with that the people that did Earthfall. But I think World War C went the extra mile and added new things, new gameplay, because it could have been honestly easier to just make simply a first-person shooter. They did a third-person over-the-shoulder shooter. They added new mechanics, they added classes, they added perks, weapon customization, the sound mechanic, and a lot of things that honestly really matter. They matter and make the game different from Left 4 Dead. those mechanics, those extra things are enough to separate the game from Left 4 Dead. And it's not really the game's problem, it's the problem of the formula, like I said a million times in this video already. The problem is reinventing the wheel. Why would you reinvent the wheel? The wheel works fine, everyone loves the wheel, why would you try to reinvent it? The point is, don't try to reinvent the wheel, just do something interesting enough so people will like it. For example, Counter-Strike, alright, we're not gonna lie, Rainbow Six Siege, one of the games that I play a lot, took some of the idea, some of the formula of Counter-Strike. It just added different elements to make it more interesting, you know, operators, sound, barricades, gadgets, everything, and that's enough to be separated from Counter-Strike. It's not fair to compare Rainbow Six to Counter-Strike, and it's the same here. I think it's not fair to compare World War Z to Left 4 Dead. The problem is that Earthfall didn't went the extra mile to be separated enough from Left 4 Dead. I think they just simply didn't make enough changes to the formula to be properly unattached to Left 4 Dead. So what is the conclusion of this video? What is the point of this video? Point is that it's not hard to replicate the formula, and it's simply harder to make the formula appealing, because let's keep this in mind, Left 4 Dead is a game that was released 10 years ago, so they're working with a formula that was released 10 years ago. Another good example is The Outer Worlds. The Outer Worlds takes a formula from 10 years ago because it was created by the people who kind of did that formula. Obsidian Entertainment. I was watching a video the other day that's honestly just wonderful, and it was simply comparing The Outer Worlds to Fallout 1. And once you think about it, if you played Fallout 1, you may understand this, but I think it's correct. It feels a lot like Fallout 1, and Fallout 1 is a game that was released 30 years ago. 30, not 10, 30. And The Outer Worlds is working with a formula from 30 years ago and with a formula from 10 years ago, and they still managed to make the game feel fresh enough so people wouldn't notice at first. And I think that's the real challenge, adding new elements, adding new things, so people don't really associate you to the formula from 30 years ago at first. Anyways guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoy it, and I'm sorry I didn't got the sociopath characters in video games video up this week, I'm sorry, but I had to rework the script because I have to replay some sections of those games to get some ideas correctly. I don't want to put any misinformation in the script. I don't want to misinform people, and I don't want to get the concept of the sociopath wrong, and I need to go over some story elements of those particular characters. Same with the Katana Zero video. I'm still working on the script because there's a concept that I kind of understand, but I don't really know how to say it, so I'm still working on that, so apologies. I hope you have a wonderful day.